Welcome back to the third part in a series that we can all relate to. My perfect family said no one ever. My name is Dan, and my family has issues too. And throughout this series, we're exploring some of those relationship dynamics that can bring some of the most incredible feelings of joy and some of the greatest heartaches as well. And we're presenting to you the hope and the power to change that is found in Christ. You know, last week we started a conversation about marriage, and this week we want to take it a step further. But I know that not everyone in the room is married. Some of you are single, or you're single again. Some of you are looking for love, or you're madly in love, or you're just coming off a really rough breakup. But the heart of what we're going to talk about today is for all of us, no matter what your relationship status is, because we're going to find the foundational principle that makes all relationships work. Now, last week, Paul laid out this really helpful diagram that we all often experience in our relationships, especially in marriage. And we talked about the dream that we all start off with, this picture of what marriage should look like. And then we talked about how reality comes into the picture, and that the distance between the dream and the reality, the distance between expectations and what we really face, creates some discontentment, even discouragement in our lives. But that we don't give up right away. No. We think we're going to fix this, we're going to make it work, and so we start working on the other person, which becomes a nightmare. And that the turning point coming out of that nightmare, the wake-up call for all of us is to stop fixing and to start serving the other person. And Paul challenged us with the model of Jesus found in Philippians 2 to live like him and to love like him, to act like he or she is better than me. But we still have a gap, don't we? I mean, that's the wake-up call, that's the major turning point, but the healthy marriage is still out here. It's still something that we need to get to. How do we get from where we are to a healthy, strong marriage? Now, I heard a story about a guy who visited weddings. He enjoyed going to them, but there's something he would never do at these weddings. He would never congratulate the couple. He would rejoice with them. He would have a lot of fun there. He'd be happy for them. But the one thing that he would not do was congratulate the couple. And when asked, why don't you congratulate the couple, he would simply respond, well, they haven't done anything yet. Have them come talk to me again in 25 years, and then I'll congratulate them. And you know, there's some truth to that. You see, falling in love and getting married, that's the easy part. But staying in love and building a great marriage, that's the hard part. How do we do it? I think there's some reasons why it's so hard and why it's a challenge. And here are three of them. The first is that the marriage is made up of two imperfect people. And that when you get two imperfect people together in close quarters for long enough, there's going to be problems. The second is that we adjust to our brokenness. Like, we get used to how things are. We even settle for how broken it is, to the point that we don't even notice it anymore. And then we also avoid what scares us. If there's an area in life where we don't feel confident or competent, we might just kind of avoid it. For me, it's with cars. To be honest, I hate car maintenance, and the reason is probably because I don't know anything about it. And my car is in trouble. It has a couple of issues. One is that there's this tire that is deflating regularly. It's just a slow leak. And so about every week or so, I just go refill it again. Why? Why don't you just get it replaced? I don't know. Maybe because I'm intimidated by looking up whatever the code number thing is in the internet, and then you got to figure out which kind of season thing that you want, and then you got to pick one out. I'm not competent in the area of cars, so I just avoid it. And that's not even the worst of it. There's this thing that happens when I stop at a light for a while. The car just starts to shudder. It just shudders there. And I got to kind of like rev the engine a little bit. Then it kind of goes away. Then it comes back. And in fact, my car has done that and stalled 3 times in the last 6 months. And I still haven't, figured out what's wrong with it and tried to fix it. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about me, though. I'm pretty sure it's the defibrillator thingy, right? But you know what's even worse is that I've adjusted to the brokenness. Like, it's so normal for me on the way home to just pull into Sheetz and put some air in the tire. Or that when I'm at a stoplight to just kind of rev the engine a little bit and keep going. Even though I know there's something wrong, I don't fix it. I've just adjusted my life around it. And the funny thing is, this is not how I treat all of life. There's areas where I feel competent and knowledgeable, and so I just get it done. I just go after it. But in this area where I don't feel so confident and knowledgeable, I run away. And let's be honest. Marriage, for many of us, is like that. It's an area where we don't feel super confident and we're not sure how to make it work, and so we might avoid it. And so we get used to the brokenness and we settle for what we have, and we just kind of live a life of avoiding conflict and trying to kind of make this thing work without it blowing up too bad, and we kind of putter along like that. And I think if you look at your life, there's kind of some warning lights on the dashboard that will let you know that your marriage is in need of a tune-up. And Paul Tripp, an author and marriage expert, shares some of them in his book about marriage, What Did You Expect? And here they are. First is disunity. Disunity. If in your relationship you're having trouble agreeing on things, disunity is when the team isn't functioning properly. Or maybe this light comes up for you, the light of misunderstanding. That's when your conversations end more with confusion and frustration than they do with clarity and understanding. Or separation, which could be it could be physical and it could be emotional. Emotionally, it's like your relationship's like the Cold War. No one's dropping a nuke, but you're definitely not allies. Or physically, it could be that when it comes to the bedroom and love in that space, it's either non-existent or it's hollow. Or maybe this light's flashing on your dash, the light of conflict. And that's when you've fought so much that you've become masters of the point and the counterpoint. And you've got your favorite weapons that you pull out when things get heated. You're really good at logic or at ridicule, or you bust out silence. It's conflict. And if your dashboard is lighting up in your life, you may be wondering, how do people build these healthy marriages? How do they get there? And if you remember anything that I say today, if you write anything down, if you need to grasp one principle for the marriage relationship and all relationships, it is this one. Write this down. Loving habits grow healthy marriages. Loving habits grow a healthy marriage. I gotta be honest with you, I am not an expert on marriage. I'm pretty sure I make more mistakes than succeed. And that's why I'm glad that we have direction from God on this one. It's fascinating to me that historians and scholars agree that there is one passage, one piece of writing from antiquity that is the most eloquent in all of the writings. And it happens to be in our Bible. It's in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. And so you can find that in your Bible or your Bible app. And as you're turning there, I just want to tell you that this book, 1 Corinthians, was written to a church who really struggled with love. And so Paul writes this to them. And Paul was a fighter turned lover. Man, he was so full of self-righteous zeal and fixing everyone else until he met Jesus, until he met love himself. And it changed him. And so he writes this letter to help them understand what real love looks like. Let's start reading in verse 4. It says, "Love is patient and love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast. It is not proud, it does not dishonor others. It's not self-seeking, it's not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, it always trusts, it always hopes, it always perseveres." What an awesome description of love. And just reading it that quickly, the couple things jump out at us. And the first is this, that love is an action. Love is something that we do. It's not just something that we feel. Love is obvious. It is visible. It is an action. You can see love because love is a verb. In fact, all of the 15 descriptions of love in this chapter in the original language are verbs. They're verbs because love is what we do. Love is an action. And these make up for us the 15 habits of love. But the second thing we notice is that love is not merely feelings. It's true, there's few things in life more wonderful and more intoxicating than falling in love. It's a cool thing. But love is more than that. It's not merely a feeling. And our culture loves to celebrate the feeling of love. And there's a problem with that. Because when you equate love with your feelings, when your feelings disappear, so does your love. Besides, any relationship driven by your feelings is destined for disaster. We all know that our feelings are fickle. I mean, come on, be honest. One moment you can be consumed with God and want nothing more than to please Him. And the next moment you can be consumed with Five Guys and want nothing more than a burger. I mean, our feelings, they're fickle and they change. And love is what you do regardless of how you feel. It's the actions. Now, I went grocery shopping with my brother-in-law last November, and we were kind of hanging out, and I was riding the car with him, and we didn't go to a Walmart or a Weis. We actually went to a farm, and the day was cold, bitter cold and rainy, and the ground was hard, and it was just the fields were barren until we walked into the greenhouse. And the conditions went from bitter to balmy. And as my brother-in-law was placing his order, I was actually given a tour around this greenhouse. And they took me around and they showed me all kinds of things that they were doing there. They showed me the water area where they had all the plants just kind of floating. And they talked about all the nutrients that they carefully monitored and put into the water to help these plants to grow. They talked about the temperature and the lighting and the environment that they created for this to work. They showed me this produce at the end that was just fresh and full and beautiful. And they had done such careful work to create a place where plants would consistently grow. And the results were great. I mean, business was booming. They were talking to me about how they were going to expand and everything. And these habits of love in 1 Corinthians 13, they create the habitat for your relationship to grow. When you practice these habits, you're building a greenhouse of sorts, a place, a space where your relationships can flourish. See, loving habits grow a healthy marriage. And you know this is true. You know that when you spend way too much time trying to keep your schedule going and focusing maybe on careers or on the kids, that your relationship with your spouse takes a dive. See, loving habits grow a healthy marriage. And so what I want to do is I want to look at these habits together from 1 Corinthians chapter 15. I want us to take a tour of the greenhouse, of the habits that we need to add to our lives to help our relationships to grow strong. But since there's 15 of them, we're going to do this quickly. And here's what I ask you to do. As we go through these 15, just listen for the one. Just listen for the one that you need to work on in your relationships. So here we go. First of all, Paul says that love is patient, that it is patient with people. The idea is that love has this long fuse, that it's not riled up easily, that when they do something that irritates you, you don't blow up at them. That means that love doesn't lose its mind when the dishes are in the sink and not in the dishwasher. It means that love doesn't honk the horn when you're waiting to go to church and the other one's holding you up. Love is kind. Kindness is a step beyond patience. While patience wouldn't have a problem, kindness does something for you. Or in other words, patience says, I can look beyond the grief, but kindness says, I'm going to give you a gift. Love says, you've been snippy all night, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give you the night off. I'll do the chores. You take a break. Or love says, you've overspent, but I'll work extra hours. Love does not envy. This word means to boil. It's that inner struggle that you have when someone else has more than you or has something that you want. Love doesn't care if the other person in the relationship makes more money, is more well-known, or more well-liked. Love doesn't boast, and it is not proud. These two go together. See, love doesn't make a big deal about itself because love is too busy making a big deal about the other person. And so when you have that dinner party and you have guests over, love doesn't talk about its own achievements. It makes a big deal about the spouse's achievements. Love does not dishonor. This simply means that love is not rude and that it's not crude. And rudeness is, I don't care about whatever I do, how it affects you. As one pastor put it, love does not use the familiarity of the relationship as an excuse to abandon common courtesy in the relationship. And so when certain sounds come out or something happens, you say, excuse me, right? You say, excuse me. Love is not rude, and it's not crude. The idea of crudeness is that I don't drag my spouse or the one I love into something that grosses them out or is inappropriate. I wouldn't do that. And so I don't watch things that my spouse finds offensive. Love is not self-seeking. And this is the heart of all of these descriptions of love. Love is not selfish. It doesn't put yourself first. Love doesn't say, hey, it's all about me. It says, no, it's all about you. So you want to watch a chick flick instead of an action movie? Okay, let's do that. Let's enjoy that together. Love is not easily angered. That means you're not easily annoyed or irritated. You're not a volcano that can erupt at any time. It means that your family doesn't have to walk around on eggshells, afraid that you're going to explode. It means that your family isn't afraid to be honest and truthful with you because of how you might react to them. Love is not easily angered. Love keeps no record of wrongs. It means love doesn't keep score. This is an accounting term. It's like love doesn't walk around with a ledger just marking down everything and keeping record of everything that you've done wrong so they can bring it out at the right time just to slam home their point. For love, forgiveness is final. Love can't hold a grudge, not for long. That means when you fight, your whole history is not fair game. Why? Because you've forgiven it. The only problem that you're allowed to talk about is the problem of the present, not every failure of the past. Love does not rejoice in evil. Love doesn't enjoy rehearsing the failures of others, especially in front of other people. Gossip does this in a weird way, like where you repeat the wrongs of others so other people can hear it too and then join in with you at criticizing them. See, the best way to test this one in your own relationships is to ask this question. If my friends only had what I had to say to go off of, would they think that my spouse or the person that I love is a loser or a winner? Love rejoices in truth. See, love tells the truth. And even if it would be painful to hear it, love asks for the truth. Love wants to know so they could stop hurting other people. Love cares to know the truth. Love rejoices in truth. And so, guys, if she asks if those jeans make her look fat, run, okay? Now, a side note here, we just have to stop because I think as some of you are listening to this description of love, you're actually really uneasy. And you're uneasy because you're thinking to yourself that love sounds a lot like enabling. Like I sacrifice, I do all the hard work, and they get off scot-free. They just get to live this never-ending vacation life because I'll love and I'll give, and they get to go and do whatever they want. And I want to say this very clearly, that love does not enable. Because love speaks truth in the relationship. But love does create space for someone who's imperfect to discover that they're imperfect and to work on it. Love says, you know what? I'm not the judge. I'm not the jury. I'm not the executioner. I'm not above you. I'm beside you. Like Paul said last week, your spouse married an imperfect spouse, which means two imperfect people are living together under one roof in close proximity to each other, and neither of you realize this, ever has a perfect day. You realize that? So that's a lot of opportunity for friction, isn't it? A lot of opportunity for fights. But do you see what love does? Love gives space. It creates this grace place between the two of you so that you can see and make changes in your life. See, love makes marriage between two imperfect people actually work. The truth is lovingly spoken in relationships. It doesn't enable, it speaks to. And love creates a space for you to grow. And I feel compelled right now to just pause for a moment and say that if you are in an abusive relationship, whether physically or verbally, that this love is not compelling you to stay. That God is not saying that the right thing for you to do is to stay in that situation. The right thing to do is to get out and to get some help. Love doesn't stay in that, right? Love isn't what compels us to stay in those kind of situations. It's fear that does. And fear is the opposite of love. Now, Paul ends this whole section with this amazing crescendo about love. And he says that love always protects or bears all things. Love can put up with a lot. It really can. It doesn't make a big deal out of everything. Love takes those irritations when they come. Get this, it takes them like an ocean absorbing sparks. Love bears all things. Love always trusts. See, love is not blind, but it does expect and hope for the best in the other. It approaches situations not from suspicion, but with an attitude that says, I believe the best in you, even though you're not there yet. Love always hopes. Love, this is incredible, is always optimistic. It doesn't give up. Love always believes that change is possible. Love always perseveres. And so the crowning jewel of this whole description is this, that love like this stands against incredible opposition and refuses to die. You cannot kill this love. Wow. That's some amazing love, isn't it? And if I was honest with you, as I look at it, I find this description of love both inspiring and discouraging. I find it inspiring because who wouldn't want to love and be loved like that? And I find it discouraging because who can love like that? Really? I don't think I can love like that. So how do we do it? How do we build these loving habits that grow a healthy marriage? And so to boil it all down, I'd like to give you these 4 pieces of advice to consider today. And number 1 is this: fill your tank first. Fill your tank first. You know, it's not much help if your friend calls you up and they're on the side of the road and they ran out of gas and you go to help them out and you run out of gas too. Not very helpful. And here's what I mean. It's Monday and you're going to go about your normal routine. And so you go to work and it turns out to be a really rough day and it's shaping up to be a terrible weekend. And so you come home and it's the first opportunity that you have to interact with them, your spouse, your significant other. And you sit down for dinner and you start chatting and then they start saying things. They're just kind of putting burdens on you. They're kind of bugging you, that are irritating to you. But you just kind of weather it a little bit and then they say that thing that just really drives you nuts. And then you remember this message. And you pause for a moment and you think, okay, love, I need to love right now. And then they give you that look and then they say that one more thing that really makes you crazy and you want to pour out love, but you ain't got anything in your tank. So you know what comes out? It's a fight and you end up frustrated and irritated, and there you go again. Now let's rewind and play the day over. You see, knowing that love is required isn't enough. You have to experience it too. So imagine there's that Monday and you get up. But instead, on this Monday, you decide to spend your first 15 minutes with God. And you spend your first 15 minutes just soaking in the love that He has for you and letting Him pour it into you. You realize He loves you and He is for you and He has never bailed on you and He never will. Now fast forward, you go through the whole day, it still stinks, but then you're sitting there at dinner and they say the same dumb thing and you're really irritated about it and you want to blow up and then you think, I need to love them. And then, well, guess what happens when you go? Love pours out. You have it this time to give. And you pour in to them. You love them. See, John 13:34 says this, Jesus speaking, a new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. You want to know how you've been loved? Every one of the 15 descriptions of love found in 1 Corinthians 13 is exactly how God has loved you. That's awesome. He's been patient with you. He's been kind with you. He's sought your best. He's forgiven you. He doesn't keep a record of your wrongs. He just erases it. He has endured so much, and He will never give up on you. You see, if you have been loved like this, you can love like this. If you pause long enough to receive it, then you can give it. If you let God pour it into you, you can pour it into others. You see, and let's just be honest, it's easy to love someone who's beautiful and not a burden. It is. And researchers tell us that your first 2 months to 2 years of a relationship, that there is this chemical high that you experience. It's intoxicating to fall in love. And that can carry you through the beginning of your marriage. You just overlook things and you let it go and you can absorb them, and it's this natural love that you have, but eventually that wears out. And the pitcher's empty. And you need something else. You need a supernatural love. You need God's love pouring into you so you can pour it into other people. Here's the deal. Love is not a feeling that you can force, but it is a resource you can refill. Love's not a feeling that you can force, but it is a resource you can refill. And so if you don't have a Bible reading plan or a habit of letting God fill you up, let me encourage you to get the app notes that we produce every week. They're an opportunity for you to learn that habit of just sitting there and being filled up by God so that it can pour out of you too. And if you'd like to get on that list where it's sent to your email or check them out on Facebook, our Next Steps host out in the lobby would be happy to help you get signed up for those. The second thing I want to recommend to you is that you give thought to your ways. Give thought to your ways. Actually think about what's going on in your relationship. Proverbs 14:15 says this, "The simple believe anything, but the prudent give thought to their steps." We often get caught in these damaging cycles in our relationships. We just keep making the same mistakes over and over again. Like, what's up with that? I mean, he shouts and she shuts up, and then she tears him apart and he runs away. And we often end up in the same place where we're frustrated and we're angry and we're hurt. It happens. But do you ever wonder why that happens? See, the simple, the foolish, they'll believe anything. They'll just keep running down that road, repeating those same mistakes over and over again. But the wise give thought to their steps. They'll pull back when they're not in the heat of the moment, and they'll say, why do we keep doing that? Why do we keep ending up there? And so you need to spend some time asking some questions. You need to ask questions like, are my words wounding people instead of loving people? Are people walking around on eggshells around me? Do I put my preferences first? Am I rude? Am I holding a grudge? Am I being really honest and truthful in this relationship? Am I helping this relationship, or am I hurting it? And remember, we're not talking about them. We're talking about you. And if you go out of here today certain what they must work on and what you must work on, you've made a mistake. Kind of shift gears right now. What's the one thing for you? What's the one of the 15 that we went through that you need to work on in your relationship? We have some help for you for this. It's a married group. They'll be taking place for 4 weeks through the month of May at each campus. And you get the details online at parkerhill.org/groups. And I want to encourage you to spend some time through the month of May. This is a really short commitment to work on the most significant relationship in your life. And if you're soon to be married, or you've been in a relationship for a while and you want some help as well, we want to encourage you to come, and you can sign up and you can get some help there too. This is going to be a great opportunity for you to think about your steps and where you're headed. Third, I want to give some advice to all the single men and women in the room. And it is this: don't look for chemistry, look for character. I mean, when you're considering who to date, it's not enough that they're like smoking hot, or that they're funny, or that they're employed. You need to look for more than that. You need to look for the characteristics of love that we described here. And you need to kind of investigate. You need to pay attention. You need to look at what they're doing. And usually not just with you, right? You need to ask, how do they treat their parents? How do they talk about ex-boyfriends or girlfriends? Do they hold a grudge? Do they keep score? Are they always bragging? Are they rude? Who gets to pick? Who goes first? And of course, they most likely won't be doing these things with you, so you also need to be asking the people around you to help you see what you might not be able to see, because let's be honest, love can blind us. It can. It does. And that's why you need to be getting some outside input from people like God and what He's looking for you, and parents, and what do they think about this relationship, and even your friends. I mean, if they're all going, okay, well, he's trouble, all right, or she's a drama queen, let's back off that. I mean, you should listen to that, tune that in. Don't just look for chemistry, look for character. And I want to give you the best advice that I ever received on dating, and it honestly helped me, and here it is. Make a commitment to run hard after God. And then run. And while you're running, look to your right and look to your left, and if there's anybody there next to you, make a mental note. That person might make a good partner someday. Then keep running hard after God, and if you look to your right, to your left, and they're still there, that's a person that you want to go on a date with. Look for someone who's going to push you towards Christ instead of compromise. That's the kind of person that you want to see if you should marry. Run hard after God and see if anyone else can keep up, and if they can, go on a date. You see, the thrill of meeting someone that you have chemistry with is an awesome thing. It's just not the only thing, so look for that character that marks true love. Fourth and final bit of advice is this: lead with vulnerability. You know, if I took this message to heart and I thought, you know, I gotta change the way that love looks in my marriage, and I go home and I clean the kitchen and I put away the kids' toys, and then I gave my wife 13 well-thought-out compliments during dinner, and then I took the kids out of the house so she can have a break, and then when we came back, I put the kids to bed, and then I surprised her with this gift card to a spa, I think she might say, "This is nice. What are you avoiding telling me?" Like, what, is there something going on here? I mean, sometimes when we've acted one way for a long time and there's a change, it's kind of hard to take. It can be a little awkward. It can be a little bit of a struggle. And sometimes when you've acted a certain way in your marriage, the changes are going to require that you're vulnerable to whatever the reaction might be. C.S. Lewis put it this way. He said, "To love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give it to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it carefully around with hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, and motionless, airless, it will change. Your heart will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable. To love is to be vulnerable, and so you have to lead the way in vulnerability. If you're on the giving end, you have to accept that they might be surprised. And if you're the one receiving, you're going to have to extend some extra grace as they try to figure it out, to try to improve your marriage and practice the habits of grace. I want to share with you a story about a real-life couple who exemplified this kind of selfless love, and their names are Robert and Muriel McQuilkin. They both met at college, at Columbia Bible College, and he proposed to her on Valentine's Day in 1948. They got married later that year. And 20 years later, Robert returned to that same college and became the president, and he was very good at what he did. But about 10 years after that, his wife, Muriel, began to show signs of Alzheimer's, and she was only 55 years old. And what I'd like to read to you is his comments on this journey. Robert wrote this: "While I had barely heard of the disease, a dread began to lurk around the fringes of my consciousness. We went to Duke University Medical Center for a second opinion and found out that she had Alzheimer's. Muriel insisted on continuing to accept invitations to speak, but she would forget what she was going to say, and gradually, reluctantly, she gave up public ministry. Muriel never really knew what was happening to her, and even though it didn't seem painful for her, it was a slow dying for me to watch the vibrant, creative, articulate person I knew and loved gradually dimming out. So began years of struggle with the question of what should be sacrificed, the ministry or caring for Muriel. Should I put the kingdom of God first, and for the sake of Christ and the kingdom, put her into an institution? And trusted, lifelong friends, wise and godly, urged me to do this, and they said Muriel would become accustomed to the new environment quickly. Would she? Would anyone love her at all, let alone love her as I do? Muriel cannot speak in sentences now, only in phrases and in words, often words that make little sense, but she can say one sentence, and she says it often: I love you. She not only says it, but she acts it. While I was at the college for 2 years, they would arrange for someone to be with her, but whenever I left, she would come out after me, and because with me she was content, but without me she was distressed, sometimes terror-stricken. She would make that trip to the school where I was at as many as 10 times a day. And sometimes at night when I helped her undress, I found bloody feet. And when I told her family doctor, he choked up. Such love, he said simply. As she needed more and more time, I wrestled daily with the question, should I continue full-time with the ministry or full-time with Muriel? Yet when the time came, the decision was firm. It took no great calculation, and in May of 1990, I resigned my position as president to take care of my wife, stating the reasons in the letter to the college. He said, the decision was made in a way 42 years ago when I promised to care for Muriel in sickness and in health till death do us part. So I told the students and the faculty, as a man of my word, integrity has something to do with it. But in all fairness, she has cared for me fully and sacrificially all these years. I cared for her for the next 40 years, and if I did, I would not be out of her debt. Duty, however, can be grim and stoic, but there is more. I love Muriel. She is a delight to me. Her childlike dependence and confidence in me, her warm love, occasional flashes of that wit that I used to relish, her happy spirit and tough resilience in the face of her continually distressing frustration. I don't have to care for her. I get to. It's a high honor to care for so wonderful a person. And that is what we desire for you at Parker Hill. That the marriages and the relationships here would exhibit the habits of love, that they would grow into healthy and strong, sacrificial and indestructible marriages. You know, the band's going to come up for a final song, a song for you just to sit and to listen to. And as you do, reflect on where your marriage could go from here. What act of love do you need to start cultivating in your relationship? Let me pray for you. God, we are so astounded by the love that you've shown us. And as a result, we want to be those kind of loving people in our relationships too. We need your supernatural love. So God, help us to grasp how much you love us and to pour it out in our relationships. Help us to run towards what we normally avoid and to start making some changes, to develop over time the habits of love, to create a grace place at home that makes all the difference. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen.